President Trump heading back to Texas has survivors search for hope after Harvey. The president pledging $1 million of his own money to disaster relief and requesting billions in recovery funding. Congress is looking at tens of billions overall. Now someone here says it is time for Congress to deliver on all of that. Welcome, everybody. I'm Neil Cavuto, and Republican New Jersey Governor Chris Christie just telling me lawmakers better not mess with Texas like they did with his state during Sandy.
The aid needs to be delivered, and tying it to debt ceiling or other things, I think, is a gross error. People's livelihoods should not be tied to whether or not the United States Congress can responsibly get to a place where they can pay their bills.
So you would think just have whatever funding you're going to have, emergency or otherwise, have it, don't tie it or attach it to anything or put provisos on it?
Absolutely not. Straight up or down vote on the aid that's necessary to make sure that the people in Houston not only can get through this first period, but I can tell you from the Hurricane Sandy experience that this lasts for a while afterwards in the rebuilding that people are going to need to get their area back to what it needs to be.
Well, Garrick Helpom says he is right. Also here, Charlie Gasparino, Kennedy, Ben Stein, and Adam Lashinsky, Charles Payne, Jerry Willis, off this week. So, Gary, your view is do it. Get the aid out there. Don't start quibbling about it.
300,000 people have applied for aid, Neil. 80% of homes do not have flood insurance. These people need help, and they need help quick. You do a standalone bill. 2 words, standalone. No addendums, no disclaimers, no caveats, no nothing. Get the vote in, get the money out. If you need to do it in tranches, fine. Just make sure the upfront's big enough to help people out. They need it, and they need it quickly.
What concerns people in these type of situations happen is others seize on it, Kennedy, and add things to the spending plan that go way beyond the hurricane relief. The thinking seems to be that's going to happen again here, but so be it. What do you think?
Yeah, we're in such a politically charged environment, and both parties incredibly unpopular with the American public. Congress has about a 15% approval rating, 75% disapprove of the job they're doing because they can anticipate what might go wrong with this. And it's not fair to give the survivors of this storm the Obamacare version of aid. They really need something, and I think Roy Blunt was right when he talked about incremental help. Instead of one giant package that can be tied to something like health care or the debt ceiling, do it in, say, 4 chunks like they did in Joplin, Missouri, for the 2011 tornado that hit there. And something like that where you can see exactly what is needed, and surgically, if Congress is capable of doing that, deploying that money, that would be much more helpful. And Gary's absolutely right. Don't tie it to anything. No pork, no other projects. Don't politicize this. People already hate you enough, Congress.
Ben Stein, what do you think?
Right. I think just give them, if people need money, give them money. I'm not exactly clear why it is that the ordinary taxpayer has to help people who are not smart enough to buy flood insurance. But assuming that we're going to just forget about that issue, yes, just give them the money. Although where it ends with just giving people money, I'm not quite sure.
I don't think you can be against helping out Texas right now. I mean, it's a horrible situation, and they need obviously they need a bridge loan, so to speak, right now, and they need it from the federal government, and it should be handled as a bridge loan. We give it to them, and we worry about it. We worry about the stuff later. But Ben makes a really good point here in this, that there's a degree of moral hazard that's always created with these bailouts. I'm not being cold here, but it is.
No, yeah.
We throw money at it, and then people move back in these zones, these areas which continually get hit with hurricanes. And
although this is an unusual flooding event.
Well, yes, this is, but don't tell me that Galveston's never been hit with.
We've had others.
Galveston has gotten crushed in the past. As a matter of fact, Galveston was a bigger city at one time, and because of the hurricanes and because of flooding, it ceased being a huge city. So we should just point out that we're creating a lot of moral hazard by just opening up the checkbook. I'm not saying don't do it. This is a horrible situation.
Adam, what do you make of that?
Get created.
I have a slightly different take on it, which is, of course, Charlie made a good point. No one is going to say, no, don't help these people. But of course, Charlie's right about the moral hazard of doing that. But I think this highlights the fact that we tend to forget the other 4.5 years or 10 or 50 years that things like this don't happen. There's only one entity that can come in and help at a time like this, and that's the federal government. And we're all glad that the federal government can do this now, and yet so many people badmouth the federal government for all of its faults all the time and say, don't spend this, don't spend that, and yet we're glad we can do it now.
But to that point,
Go ahead, Kennedy.
I just want to make a quick point about that, because we know that the best assistance comes from local organizations and local government. And the problem with, this massive federal aid package, which obviously they need the money now. These are people who could never have anticipated something like this decimating their lives on so many levels. There's no doubt about that. But in the future, the reliance on that massive federal government check means that states, counties, and cities don't have appropriate emergency response if they are that reliant.
Neil, I totally agree with Kenny, and that argues for good long-term planning, for good policy, for a good conversation between the parties, between local and the federal government. But it also argues for maintaining the power of the federal government to step in when it needs to.
Adam, let's be real clear. I know where you're getting at. You're trying to tell us that big government works. We should all the time. And there are certain things.
Charlie, fair point. Fair point. Not all the time.
Right. It's
but sometimes.
Listen, they're good at the armed. The federal government's really good at the armed forces. I don't think the federal government should be in local law enforcement. Should be doing local law enforcement. And,
fair point.
And there is a common ground here, and that's what's going on here. But I will say Ben Stein made a really good point before. We have created moral hazard, no consequence to risk. People are going to move back into these areas once they get their money. And guess what? In 10 or 15 years, the same thing could happen.
I totally agree with you. We should discuss that as a country.
All right. Well,
but we should also be asking why it is that here in California we homeowners get letters saying you absolutely must buy flood insurance. Why didn't these people get these kinds of letters from the state of Texas or someone saying you must have flood insurance?
Well, I was surprised at that, Ben, in that you would think their mortgage holders would demand it. I mean, or else they wouldn't have a mortgage on a property.
They certainly do They certainly do in California.
Well, that's one thing you guys do better. Just one.
Well, Gary Kalthbaum, I'll end with you on this and this notion. Talk about aid, it's got to get there. Whether you do it in tranches, that, to Kennedy's point, might be the better way because you can police it better, make sure the funds get to the deserving entities and quickly. But you are going to give money to the same people who ignored the calls to either get flood insurance or their mortgagees did, and they will get the same amount of money, presumably, as those who did have such coverage. And I'm wondering whether that kind of indiscretion is something that will come back and bite taxpayers. What do you think?
Well, look, when you use the term federal government, we're talking taxpayer. That's who pays for all this. And as far as these people that did not follow, I don't know if it's the rule, law, just something they should have done, you do it better next time. Look, these are outlier events. They don't happen very often, but when they do happen, there is somewhat, I don't know if you call it a call of duty, but we as Americans all in the United States should gather around and try to get something done. These people need the help. And I get the point about moral hazard, so here's what you do. The state, the city, the mayor, you get together, you see why it didn't work, why 80% of the people do not have flood insurance, and make sure the next time it's a different story.